The only reason a team exists is because there's a challenge or an opportunity that's too big for one person to handle alone. We've got to start with that interdependence, the fact that we need each other, because those components stack on that foundation.
Welcome to Engage Presents. I'm Engage co-founder and president Jake Olson. In this interview series, I ask Engage talent the most common questions we hear from event planners to help you get to know them and their stories in 15 minutes or less. Thanks for listening. Welcome to Engage Presents. I am Engage president Jake Olson, alongside with a very special guest today, Lee Rubin. Lee is a motivational speaker, has accomplished a lot in his life, including being a former Nittany Lion, which, Lee, I don't want to start this interview off on the wrong foot, but in my pocket here, I just so happened to find a little Rose Bowl ring I have for beating those Nittany Lions in 2017.
Yeah, we're a friendly group, and we want to make sure that everyone feels good about themselves and and not quit. So every now and then we make sure that we allow other teams to score more points that day. And
that is so nice of you, man. That's so nice.
It's all good.
I love it, man. No, thank you for being a good sport with it. I had to do it. But you were a prominent player of those Nittany Lion teams, Penn State teams back in the day. Tell us just real quick about kind of your position you played there and just your kind of experience on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So from New Jersey, Penn State recruited Jersey really hard back in those days. Was a 3-year starter at free safety, sort of the quarterback of the defense. This is back in the early 90s, some great years. What is worth noting, based on your introduction, is my breakout game was at the LA Coliseum.
Oh, okay, there you go. Okay.
So I was a backup my sophomore year, and the starter got hurt. I came in, had 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery. So had a really great game, started the rest of my career. So I am very fond of playing in LA.
I love it, man. I love
it.
both.
In fact, Jake, one more before we move on to like real stuff. Penn State plays at the Coliseum this year.
Do they?
Yeah, October 12th, something like that.
All right. Well, let me know if you're going to be there. I'm definitely trying to come out to Happy Valley when I got some friends in Pennsylvania, Jersey. So
sweet.
Yeah. But let me know if you're in town, man. Because
I'm coming. That's
okay.
And interestingly enough, I've got to talk that Monday or the following Monday or Tuesday. Had no idea those dates worked out the way they did, but I'll be there.
Well, it's easy to be confident through a screen. I don't know if I would have pulled that little nonsense off in the beginning if I knew I was going to meet you in a couple months.
Yeah, real tough talk on Zoom. But no,
awesome, man. Well, back on track. So you talked about kind of being on that Penn State team. You also were on many teams in corporate America. So how did being on those various teams, shape kind of what you speak about?
Yeah, well, my talk is about teamwork. And whether you're talking about athletics or professional organizations, the concepts, the principles are consistent, and it doesn't matter which industry, because people are people, and working together, collaboration and cooperation those principles are consistent across the board. And I will say that my background in team sports, whether basketball or football, were principles that I was able to carry over and help some of those organizations build extraordinary teams.
Awesome. And you talked about kind of those principles, those key components. You have 5 of them that make up an extraordinary team. What are they?
Yeah. So let me start sort of with the philosophy. And I think it's foundational, which is why I always back up and start here. The only reason a team exists is because there's a challenge or an opportunity that's too big for one person to handle alone. We've got to start with that interdependence, the fact that we need each other, because those components stack on that foundation. So, as any good speaker would, there's some alliteration to help folks remember. So all of those components start with the letter C. The first one is extraordinary teams are comprised of competitors, not people working against each other, but people driven to be their absolute best and passionately driven to close the gap between where they are and where they could be or where they should be. The second component is extraordinary teams have a common goal. Much easier to say than it is to execute because there's always some level of selfishness, right? On a team, folks join the team to benefit themselves instead of helping to achieve that common goal. So I really push the idea, the notion that it's required. Everyone's required to make a sacrifice at some point. The third component is extraordinary teams communicate. And more than just the exchange of information, what we're really trying to do in our communication is be open, be empathetic, be thoughtful so that we can build a culture of trust, right? And that's really what it's all about because, one of the statements that I love to make is where there is no trust, there is no team. We may have a collection of talented individuals, but if we don't trust each other, everyone is holding back. And that's not really what a team is. The fourth component is extraordinary teams have this thing called chemistry, right? We're connected, we're bonded. I think when we look at human relationships, right, we understand how important it is for us to feel connected with each other. I think the tough part about that is when we understand that those bonds, those connections typically happen as a result of heat and pressure. Bonds are formed under heat and pressure. And that's the stuff we don't like. It's the discomfort. It's the adversity. But that's where we find out if we're really about the team or if we're really about ourselves. And then the fifth and last component is extraordinary teams are consistent. There's no way we can call ourselves an extraordinary team if we're inconsistent, up one day, down another. And so we talk about what it means and how we build that type of consistency. So those are the 5 C's.
Are you married, Lee?
I am. 29 years, man.
That doesn't surprise you. You tell me this, and I'm getting chills because I'm just like, do you teach, like, do you help married couples? Do you teach any marriage? I mean, this thing would be like, I'm just sitting here in like corporate America, but like, I feel like marriages need this like badly.
Jake, I have given this talk at marriage workshops. It's the same stuff.
Yes.
And I will say this, because my wife is just an incredible human being. She often would come to hear me speak and share these 5 C's until on one ride home, she says, babe, great talk, but we need to communicate. She's using my own material against me. I'm like, okay, that's it. No, but yeah, you're exactly right. It's whether you're talking about family, faith, business, sports, consistent.
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. That's so empowering. That's so powerful. So I don't want to get too sidetracked on that because I could talk about that forever, man. That's so cool. From an actual logistical standpoint, you are like me when I speak. I don't use slides. For me, it's because I can't see them anyway, so why use them? I'm to see why you don't use slides.
Fair. My mentors, the folks who kind of brought me up in this business, said you need to know your material, right? And you don't want to use those slides as a crutch. And often speakers, they're not using it because of they're not using them on behalf of the audience to make sure that they see something. They're actually using them as a crutch. And so I was just trained that, listen, no notes, no slides. If you don't know your stuff, you should not be on a stage getting paid to speak. And in fairness, there are some topics, there are some things where those visual aids are critical and necessary. These intangible ideas, I just find that it's best had when we're just having a conversation.
I couldn't agree more. And then finally, winning obviously is important to you, important to Penn State. But what does it look like for Lee to have a win after a speech, during a speech, kind of the whole process? What does a win look like for you?
Yeah, what does a win look like? That's a great question. I think so. I enjoy when I see the light bulb go off, right? Like you can see it, right? When it clicks for someone, when something that they've been struggling with or an issue that their team is dealing with, right? And I share a principle, I share a concept, and the light bulb goes off. That's exciting, especially in a live audience. But I think a win for me is when I get that note, when I get that email, when I get that phone call 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road. And the message is, Lee, what you shared, we put it into practice and we've seen the transformation on our team, right? Because that's ultimately what we want. It's great to have a good time, but we ultimately want to see people benefit. We ultimately want to see people put into practice and benefit from the things that we talk about.
I love that, and I bet you get that a lot, because what you have to say is truly impactful. I can just tell. I can just tell how you talk and just who you are. It is. So I appreciate you being with us today, Lee. I appreciate you being on the platform. If anyone wants to learn more about Lee, obviously book Lee. Go ahead and go on Engage, letsengage.com. You can check out his profile. Lee, do you want to put your socials out there just so they can follow you as well?
Yeah, it's really LinkedIn for me. That's really where I focus my attention. It's right there, Lee Rubin, keynote speaker on LinkedIn. Um, would love to connect, would love to answer any other questions you may have. I absolutely love what I do and love talking about it. So yeah, reach out.
All right. Well, I think I made a new friend today, except on October 12th or whatever.
Exactly.
Let's get you
Exactly.
back in that Coliseum, and hopefully you have a worse time than you did the first time you played in
Yeah,
there, it sounds
yeah.
like.
Well,
So I
here's the
appreciate
irony,
you, Lee.
Jake, is we lost that game. So
Oh,
it was a bittersweet experience, right? Yes, I am now the starter, and now, I'm in, but it's a team sport and we lost. So it was a long flight home back to Pennsylvania.
it is gonna be a long flight home. That's
Yeah,
true, man. A long distance between Happy Valley and Los Angeles. So, but
absolutely.
all right,
True.
man. Thanks for joining us today. And I'll say go Nittany Lions. All right, I'll give you that,
Cool.
Lee. All right. But
I appreciate that. I'm going to work my way up to
yeah,
say anything about the
yeah,
Trojans.
I know. It's
It'll
it's
take
it's,
me
it's the big
it'll
bad
take
F
me
word.
some
I get
time.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
All
Appreciate
right,
your time.
stay,
Thanks. Thanks, Jake.